Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell, and welcome to another episode of Thrive, turning uncertainty into your competitive advantage. This is a show where we talk about the steps, we talk about the strategies, everything that you need to know to turn all of this uncertainty into your opportunity, your competitive advantage. Now, I am super excited because I've got a great friend here today and a real sales powerhouse, Cynthia Barnes. Welcome to the show, Cynthia.
Hey, Meredith, thank you so much for having me.
Well, you know what? There are maybe a few people out there who do not know you. Tell us a little bit about you. And I'm really curious about your story. How the heck did you get into sales in the first place?
Girl Scouts.
Oh, yeah, me too. I
You
was
see,
the number one cookie seller.
right. Those of us that had the opportunity to go from brownies to fly up to Girl Scouts, we thrived in that arena. So yes, I blame it on Girl Scouts. People say, "How long have you been selling?" And I say, "Well, since Girl Scout cookies were about $1.50 a box." So it's been a long path in sales. I love sales, and I've sold everything from Girl Scout cookies to pharmaceuticals, the legal kind, to logistics. And in 2016, I decided that it wasn't enough to reach the top 1% again in another vertical. It was my legacy to see how many other women I could help reach the top 1%. So that's why I started NAWSP. And now we're an organization of women who sell around the globe, and we teach them how to reach the top 1% with training created by women for women.
Right. You know, it's one reason I really wanted to talk to you. I want to talk sales in general, but I do want to talk about sales as a profession for women,
Mhm.
as well as for minorities. I know that when I was in my 30s, and I am old enough that I really very much came up through a man's world, it was one of the only professions where I could make enough money to support my family. My first husband was quite sick and couldn't work. And so the whole ability to buy a house to really pay our bills was on me. And sales was really my only opportunity where it didn't matter if I was short, tall, thin, fat, man, woman. It just didn't matter because as long as you could sell, you could produce. So kind of, what is your thought process around why are you so passionate about helping women find this as a career and to some degree diversity in general in the profession?
Sales is the absolute best career out there because it lets you call the shots. A lot of
Yeah.
salespeople are budding entrepreneurs, if you will, and they like the ability to run their book of business the way they want to, the way they use their creativity and they use their drive, and you can make as much money as you want to, dependent upon how much effort you're willing to put in. And I always tell women, it is your job, your duty to make as much money as fast as possible because you just don't know when the unthinkable is going to happen. And I'm not saying, doomsday and all that. I'm saying, in 30 years, the roof may go out on your house. You may have a loved one who is sick. I don't know of any woman with $250,000 in the bank that regrets having a child and saying, okay, I get to go back to work when I want to go back to work because I have money in the bank. And quite frankly, Meredith, money equals security, and that provides you with options. That's what we try to stress. It's not about the materialistic things, it's about money, security, and options.
Yeah, I also think one of the things too is that I find as women we need flexibility. We
Yes.
just do. I mean, it's funny. I'm married a second time now because my first husband passed. But in my second marriage, my husband has the children. I don't. But even though he goes to work, I'm still the one who worries if something's going on. I mean, I want to be available for this. I want to be available for that. And sales really gave me flexibility in my job. I didn't have to do everything between the 8 and 5 time frame. So if I needed to care for an aging parent, if I needed to pick kids up at school, if I needed to do all types of things, I had far more flexibility to do it.
Yes, freedom and flexibility. You can't put a price on that. Like you said, if you're part of the sandwich generation, you've got aging parents on
Yeah.
one side and you've got college age kids on the other. You've got the freedom and the flexibility to pick up the grandkids, take care of an aging parent. You've also got the money to make sure that your kids don't graduate with $300,000 in debt.
Yeah.
I mean, freedom, flexibility, and security. That's what sales is. And that isn't that what we all want anyway?
Absolutely. Whether you're a man, woman, no matter what, no matter your age, definitely. So where's the barrier though? Where's the obstacle for, women getting into sales?
It starts with it's twofold. Number one, there are a lot of women who say I can't sell, even though you
Yeah.
do every day. Because I think everybody sells. Some
Oh,
of us
all the time.
for it. Right, right. And sales is nothing more than influencing decision makers to say yes. So whether that decision maker is your 5-year-old child or whether it is a coworker, you are trying to influence decision makers to say yes. So part of it is I don't want to enter a profession of people that don't look like me because
Yeah.
we have to admit that the sales professional still is primarily one gender, one race. And
Hmm.
some of us don't feel comfortable going into a situation where I'm the only one. And then there are too many of us who have been the only one, who have been that token. And we know that we are going to be trailblazers in an industry, but it's not always fun and it's not
Yeah.
gratifying. We sign up to be trailblazers and we've got bloody knees and elbows, as Sherilyn says, for trying to blaze a path. And then the other thing happens to be with companies not being or creating environments where they are welcoming to underrepresented populations. So they can try to check boxes and say, yes, we are promoters of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we want more women in sales. However, when we have boards that are all one race, one gender, when we have interviewing committees that are all one race, one gender, that tells someone who is not of that race and who is not of that gender that you just don't belong here.
Yeah. It's funny. When I first got into sales, I really got into it when I got into financial services. That was the first time it had been labeled a sales job. And again, I joined a very male dominated industry. And there were a couple of things about that. Number one, personally, I focused too much on the men who weren't supporting me and didn't give enough value to the men that were. Because I think when you're quote unquote different, anytime you go into that environment, if you're honest with yourself, even though you don't look like everybody else, some people really want you there. And even if it's only one or two, if you focus your energy there, that can be so powerful. But the underlying problem that was really there, that was truly a challenge, was even these guys that wanted to help me, how they succeeded at sales was different than me. Like they were going to the country club and going in the men's grill. I was a single female at the time, and asking men in a small town to go out and drink a beer was not something that was available to me. And even though they meant well, my path had to be different. So I even think even if the company's, quote unquote, trying, there still has to be other support systems, which I guess is your association.
Yes, yes. And for those companies that say we want to do different and we want to do better, start by having some women on those interview committees,
Yeah.
having women on leading those ERGs, because it's hard for an all male panel to make decisions of what's good for women. They
Yeah.
just Men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
Yeah.
So it's a recipe for disaster. You have to have decision makers who look like the avatar that you are trying to attract.
Yeah. Why is it good for a company to have women on their sales teams?
Woo! Who knows? You don't, not Cynthia Barnes Franklin, but the data show that women in sales close more and more money and more frequently than men, to the tune of
Wow.
almost twice as much. Companies who have sales teams that are at least 50% female have up to 50% more revenue. So there is a business case, a revenue generating business case for having more women in sales. And if you ask anybody, my buddy Steve Hall from our buddy Steve Hall from Australia will just
Yeah.
flat out tell you women sell better. But don't go based upon our word for it. Look at the data. Gartner has great data. Forrester has great data on women in sales. Mary Shea and her team over at Forrester just did the state of selling for women in B2B sales. There's actual factual data that say women produce more and bigger results.
So, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in sales in general today? As you're dealing with clients and those that you coach and consult and speak to, what are some of the biggest challenges since COVID has hit and we're living in this uncertain environment?
And I won't say that it's necessarily since COVID has hit, but there's a huge diversity, equity, and inclusion push based upon the events of 2020.
Yeah,
COVID has a lot to do with that because you used to be able to go and rent a hotel room, put up a whole bunch of recruiting tables, and recruit your target market. So, reaching those that you want to recruit, women in sales, for example, is a lot harder post COVID and in this era. So, you're combining the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts of people who want to attract, hire, develop, and retain women in sales. And then you have the constraints of COVID. COVID knocked everybody on their butt. We don't know what's going on from one minute to the next. Are we getting vaccines? Are we not getting vaccines? And it's not about the political climate. It's about our ability to pivot and pivot quickly and then pivot again. So you've got all of these different things prohibiting what companies really want. But the good news is that there are some companies out there that are making it work and they're
yeah.
doing it well.
Yeah. I think that, I think for companies that really want more women and want more diversity in their ranks, sales is a really good way to get people in there.
Yes,
Again, because it's, I get a flexible job and I can make a lot of money.
yes.
And you sort of get to set, other than the fact that you have your goals, you get to control a lot of what you do day in and day out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That freedom and that flexibility. And a lot of companies are realizing that if they want to hire and attract women in sales, they're not going to hold them to that FaceTime rules of you must be
Yeah.
available or online from 9 until 5. A lot of companies are saying as long as you get the job done, we don't care if you do it at 2 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And those companies are winning.
Yeah, I agree, and it's smart to be that way. So let's flip it around and let's talk about the professional out there who's listening to us right now. And I can go back to myself at I think I started officially selling when I was 33. And you're right. I always say that we've always been in sales. If you ever tried to get a kid to eat a vegetable or your spouse to lose a little weight, you have always, or just convince your parents to let you go to a party on Friday night, right?
Right.
You've always been in sales, but how do one of the biggest things that I get from women is once we get past the fear of, oh, I don't think I could sell, and they've bought into this ideas. I don't have sales on my resume. I don't have a background in sales, but they'd like to make that transition.
Mm.
What should they be doing?
We are working with a company who specializes in helping mothers return to the workforce.
Nice.
Yes, and one of the things that we're focusing on is the transferable skills that women have. For example, if you can raise a child, you can run a household, you can manage time very well with Johnny's soccer practice and Sarah's ballet, and then you are educating them throughout the day, you have excellent time management skills and you can multitask and organize the logistics of a home. That's not to be taken lightly.
Right.
So one thing I would say is work with a resume writer and talk about all the transferable skills that you have in your previous line of work, working from home, your volunteer experience, and then put those into sales speak. The right recruiter and the right talent acquisition folks are going to look at that and say, you know what? These are the transferable skills that make people successful in sales. So what if you don't have a bona fide sales experience on your resume? You've got those transferable skills, and that's what we want because we can teach you how to sell. We can teach you the product knowledge of our company.
Yeah.
But if you don't have drive and ambition and you're not organized and you're not, it's just not going to work. So use those
Yeah.
transferable skills. You've got them. Everybody does. Just tweak them.
Yeah, I just helped a company hire a salesperson. It was a young minority gentleman, and they asked me to interview three of their candidates.
Mhm.
And he didn't have much experience. The other two had far more experience. But when I got on the phone with my client, I was just giving them my input and advice. Who they were going to hire was their business. But I said that here's what I liked about him. is he's got no fear. He'll pick up the phone and he'll call anybody. He's got incredible drive. Like he really wants to work. You could feel, you could feel that energy, and he's open to learn.
Yes.
And I said, those are the skills I can't teach somebody. There are a couple things that he doesn't have a process. I can teach that. There's a couple things that I want to even clean up about his language. I can teach that all day long. Yeah. But those inner pieces, and I think that's something we get so hung up on resumes with salespeople. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, almost to me, the longer you've been in sales, sometimes it's a bigger negative, because I've always been hired to sell in companies because I could sell, not because I had experience in the industry. Right. Never have I been hired because I had experience. I was always flipping industries. And I always felt I was a better salesperson at the beginning before I had a lot of knowledge, because I really listened.
Yes.
If I went out and called on a customer, I had no choice because I couldn't solve their problem right away.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are what they call in the military dogfighting skills.
Great.
That make you scrappy. And you're right. The longer you're in sales, the more bad habits you have to unlearn.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you ever went to work for somebody who was so hung up on process that I've had a lot of salespeople that I've hired that worked at another company that was so hung up on a process that no matter what, you had to work a process. And I'm all about a sales process, but sales is art and science.
It is.
I mean, that's why you need a human. That's why I don't believe it'll ever be replaced by artificial intelligence, because you feel your way, you got to feel your way through it. What is your thought on the AI? The thought of, will salespeople be replaced?
Absolutely, positively not. You can weed out customers. You can use marketing to attract those that you want and repel those that you don't. However, when it comes to true sales is relationships.
Yeah.
Sales is knowing your customer as well as you do your best friend, so that they trust you enough to pick up the phone or send an email and say, "Get it done, Cynthia." You don't want them to question whether or not they're on your team and you're all for them. That relationship is what women thrive at. We are so good at building relationships. And I think that's our number one strength, is the ability to build relationships. And we take relationship building slowly, and as opposed to others who take it fast. And I always tell our members, building relationships in sales is like dating.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yes, you find someone that you like, and you're not going to pick up the phone, or you're not going to approach them in the grocery store and say, "Hey, you want to go away for the weekend?"
Yeah.
No. You strike up a conversation. You may exchange numbers. You exchange a few texts. You decide, okay, I'd like to text them again tomorrow. I'd like to maybe have a phone call. Then I'd like to have coffee. Maybe I'll see them for dinner. It's a slow process, but the slower it is in dating, the stronger the marriage. You don't go into dating thinking, I'm going to marry someone next week. The same with sales. And women know that slow, consistent relationship development is going to yield higher results. We don't go in for the wham bam, thank you, ma'am. And that's where we excel.
Yeah, it's interesting. Back in 2008, I wrote a book when the market kind of crashed in 2008, that the economy really had changed. And when the economy changed after that, it really started to speak to the skills that come naturally to women. Because once we went global and I could buy a product anywhere I wanted to buy it from anybody, now layer COVID on top of that. The truth is, I can sit right here in my hotel room, Google anything and buy it. I don't have to interact with a salesperson. Right. But the skills that really got replaced, such as really trying to win over your customer, kind of like being as persistent as heck and just getting on them until they buy or something like that, became replaced with connection, collaboration, and communication. And those are skills that just come naturally to women. It's about partnering with people. Yes. It's about really listening and communicating. And it is about that connection first. Because the only reason people buy from you is because they know you, like you, and trust you. Yes. It's always been that way, but now it's on steroids.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
And in a world where we can Google and get it in our hand, we can Google something and get an answer like that. I think the true professional salesperson realizes that they are being paid to solve problems and provide answers that people can't Google. You take
Right.
someone who has tried to get fit and you Google, okay, so how do I lose weight? You will get 15,000 trillion billion pages.
Yeah.
What people will pay for is someone to say, based upon your DNA, based upon your lifestyle, and based upon your goals, here is what is going to work for you. And here is a strategic plan that is going to work for you. That's what the consultative nature of what women do so well. That's what works. You can get any kind of information out there, but as long as you realize that you are solving problems that people can't Google, you win.
That's when you're going to excel. All right. It is hard to believe, but we have about come to the end of our show. I have 2 questions left for you. I know it goes fast, doesn't it?
Yes.
Number 1 is I'm looking for your best piece of advice out there. And I want 2 pieces of advice. I want one for the company that's really looking to diversify and understands that their customer base is changing and therefore they need to change their sales team. The second is for anybody out there who wants to get into sales, what is something that they should do? Then I want you to tell our listeners how they can find more out about you and all the work that you're doing.
Okay. If you're a company that is interested in hiring and attracting women in sales, realize that there are 4 pillars to doing so. There's attract, hire, develop, and retain. If you don't have any processes in place for a woman in sales initiative to develop them once they are in the door, then you lose them.
Yeah.
Everybody's upset. Piggybacking on that, you have to go where the women in sales are. You can't put a job description or a job posting on Indeed and hope that they will come to you. 78% of the Fortune 500 companies are trying to attract and hire women in sales. That means that you have a lot of competition and they've got big dollars to throw at the target. You win by number 1, going where they are and developing relationships with them. Then you will attract them. But make sure that you have a woman in sales initiative to support them once they get there, or else they will leave and everybody's ugly.
That's excellent.
Yes.
All right. Now your advice for the salesperson, the person wanting to get into sales.
If you want to get into sales, make up your mind to do it and do it. Find those transferable skills and don't be afraid to highlight and toot your own horn. You've got amazing accomplishments. I don't care if you've raised a 5-year-old. There are some of us that have never raised a 5-year-old. The diaper changes and the bottle feedings and all of that. Highlight your strengths, toot your own horn, and find a company who is laser focused on hiring you. Go where you are celebrated, not where you are tolerated. If you find that person A, B, C, D, and E all look the same, that's not the company for you.
Yeah.
Go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated.
Excellent. All right. So how do people find a hold? And so the additional last name now is Franklin, Cynthia Barnes Franklin?
Yes, I just got married.
Yes, congratulations. Well, I want to make sure I include all 3. I know how important that is because I tacked mine on the end of it too.
Yes.
But how do people get a hold of you? How do they find out more about all the fantastic work you're doing?
The LinkedIn is where I spend the majority of my time. That's where my tribe is. We also have nawsp.org is where all of our members are. So you'll find me 2 places. Actually 3 places: on a fishing boat with my husband.
Nice.
The second place will be LinkedIn. You can always find me at Cynthia Barnes. And at nawsp.org is where our community is, and you can learn about our membership options and things like that.
And tell everybody really quickly what NAWSP stands for.
Yes, National Association of Women Sales Professionals.
I really wanted you to call that out because it's such an amazing organization, so needed. And if we just get one message out, I mean, honestly, women out there is just no greater equalizer than being really good at sales. I mean, what it builds for your own confidence, your own skill set, your own future and freedom is just fantastic.
Yes, you owe it to yourself. You're going to put the work in anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're going to work hard for any company out there. Be rewarded for your hard work and your efforts, and leave a legacy that people will be proud of and that you will be proud of. You owe it to yourself.
I agree. Well, thank you so much, Cynthia. It's been awesome having you here today.
Yeah.
I want to have you back on to talk a little bit more because I have about, I don't know, a bunch of other questions I would like to ask. So we need to book another one.
Yes.
So thank you everybody for joining us for another episode of Thrive, Turning Uncertainty to Competitive Advantage. Remember to join me at my website, valuespeaker.com, valuespeaker.com. You'll find my quiz there to figure out where you fall on the scale of success and how you can turn all of this uncertainty into your competitive advantage. We'll see you next week.